Picture this. A police officer walks up your garden path, stops at your front door, and before they even knock, they notice your doorbell camera sitting right above the door. Instead of just knocking like anyone else would, they reach up, place a hand over the lens, or flip it upward so it's pointing at the sky. You might be thinking, surely that can't be allowed. And you'd be right to question it. But most people genuinely don't know what the law actually says here. And more importantly, they don't know what to do if it happens to them. In this video, I'm covering everything. Whether police are even allowed to be at your door in the first place, whether covering or disabling your camera is legal, what to say if it happens, and exactly how to report it properly. Let's get into it. Let's start with the basics, because this is the foundation everything else is built on. Most people assume the police have some special right to walk up to any house whenever they like. They don't. When an officer walks up your path to knock on your door, without a warrant, without you calling them, they are relying on exactly the same legal permission as your postman, your Amazon delivery driver, or someone canvassing for a local charity. This comes from a well-known case in English law called Robson v. Hallett, 1967. The court ruled that a homeowner gives what's called an implied license to any member of the public to walk up the ordinary path to the front door and knock. That's the entire scope of it. Nothing more. Two crucial points come out of this case. First, that license can be withdrawn at any time. If you tell an officer to leave, that permission disappears immediately. Once it's withdrawn, they're legally required to leave within a reasonable time. If they don't, they become a trespasser, exactly like anyone else would. Second, the license only covers the direct route to your door. It doesn't give an officer any right to wander around your garden, look through your windows, or start interfering with things on your property, including your camera. So, before we even get to the camera question, understand this. When an officer knocks on your door with no warrant, they are a visitor, not an authority with automatic access to your property. Now, to be fair to the other side of this, there are situations where police genuinely do have the power to enter without a warrant, and it's worth knowing exactly what those are, because officers sometimes stretch these powers further than the law allows. Section 17 of the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, 1984, PACE, sets out a specific, limited list of situations where a constable can enter and search premises without a warrant. In plain English, these include executing an arrest warrant, arresting someone for an indictable, more serious offence, recapturing someone who has escaped lawful custody, saving life or limb, or preventing serious damage to property, genuine emergencies. That last one, saving life or limb, is the one most commonly misused. Officers sometimes use the phrase welfare check to suggest they have an automatic right to come inside. They don't. The courts have made this very clear. In one important case, a judge ruled that simply having a general concern for welfare is not enough to justify forcing entry under this power. It has to be a genuine, specific emergency, not just a general worry. Here's why this matters for our topic. If officers don't have one of these specific emergency grounds, they have no more right to force their way past your door, or interfere with anything near it, including your camera, than the Robson v. Hallett implied license allows, which, as we covered, is simply the right to walk up and knock. Here's the honest truth, and I always give you the honest truth on this channel. There isn't a specific UK court case that deals with this exact scenario, an officer physically covering a doorbell camera during a knock and talk. So I won't pretend there's a headline ruling sitting there ready to quote. What I can do is walk you through how the law we've just covered would almost certainly apply. Point 1. It's not ordinary business, and that matters. Remember, an officer's right to be at your door is exactly the same as a parcel courier's. Ask yourself honestly, would it be acceptable for your delivery driver to walk up and, instead of knocking, reach up and cover your doorbell camera with their hand? Obviously not. Most people would consider that bizarre, intrusive, even threatening. If a private citizen doing that would be treated as acting improperly, or even as trespassing once asked to stop, then a police officer doing the same thing has no built-in exemption. Being in uniform doesn't hand you extra rights over someone else's property. Point 2. Interfering with your property can amount to criminal damage. Under the Criminal Damage Act 1971, it is an offence to intentionally or recklessly damage or destroy someone else's property without a lawful excuse. If an officer disables your camera, pulls it off the wall, or breaks it, even a relatively cheap plastic doorbell unit that can, in principle, meet the legal definition of criminal damage. A hand briefly placed over the lens is a grayer area and less likely to count as damage in the strict legal sense, but physically tampering with the device, prying it loose, or disabling it electronically moves much closer to that line, and could also raise questions under other property and trespass laws depending on exactly what happened. Point 3. It can seriously undermine their own evidence, and courts know it. If police later claim something happened at your door, that you were aggressive, that you said something incriminating, whatever the account might be, and it later comes out that they deliberately blocked the one independent piece of evidence that could confirm or contradict their version, that is exactly the kind of detail a solicitor will raise in court. Judges do not look kindly on the idea that the only witness to an encounter was the officer's own notebook, especially when independent footage was available and was deliberately removed from the picture. So while there isn't one single case to point to with this exact fact pattern, the combination of trespass principles from Robson versus Hallett, potential criminal damage, and basic evidential fairness gives you real, solid ground to push back, and absolutely gives you grounds to report it afterwards. Let's make this practical. Here's exactly what I'd tell a client in this situation. Step 1. You do not have to open the door. Full stop. Unless police have a valid warrant or a genuine emergency falling within Section 17 of PACE, you are under no legal obligation to open your door or to speak to anyone standing on your doorstep. You're allowed to speak through the door, through an intercom, or not respond at all. Step 2. Don't step outside to just have a quick word. This is one of the most common tricks used to get people to lower their guard. Officers will often say something like, "Just step out for a second. It'll only take a minute." Don't. The moment you step outside, you lose the extra legal protection that comes with being inside your own home, and you put yourself in a position where anything you say or do can be used to justify further action, including a claim of reasonable suspicion that wouldn't otherwise exist. Step 3. If you see them touching your camera, say so clearly and get it on record. Something as simple and calm as this works well. "I'm noting that you've just covered my doorbell camera. I don't consent to that, and I'd like your name and collar number, please." You're not being aggressive here. You're creating a clear, calm record of exactly what happened. That record matters enormously if you ever need to file a complaint or take further action later. Step 4. Ask directly whether they have a warrant. If the answer is no, you're entitled to say, "Then I'm not required to let you in, and I'd like you to leave, please." Once you've said this clearly, remember Robson versus Hallett. Their implied license to be there has now been withdrawn, and they are required to leave within a reasonable amount of time. Step 5. Know your right to silence, UK style. This isn't the American Miranda warning you see in films. The UK version is called the police caution, and it reads, "You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defense if you do not mention when questioned something which you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence." In practice, if you're not under arrest and there's no genuine emergency, you are not obliged to answer questions on your doorstep at all. A simple, "I'd rather not answer questions right now," is enough. It's also worth knowing that some doorbell cameras, like Ring or similar smart devices, can potentially be disrupted electronically rather than just physically covered. If an officer or anyone else deliberately interferes with the device's connection or software without lawful authority, that starts to move into territory covered by laws, like the Computer Misuse Act 1990, which deals with unauthorized access to or interference with computer systems. And a smart camera connected to the internet can fall within that definition. This is a more unusual scenario, but it's worth being aware that digital tampering isn't automatically treated differently from physical tampering just because no wires were pulled out. Whether the encounter ends calmly or not, here's what actually matters once the officer has left. Write down exactly what happened while it's fresh. Note the time, the date, what was said, and, if you manage to catch it, the officer's name, collar number, and which force they were with. Memory fades fast, and small details can matter enormously later. Preserve whatever footage you do have. Even if the camera was covered partway through, whatever was recorded before that moment can still be valuable, including the moment the officer reached up and covered it. Save it, back it up, and don't rely on your device's default storage settings, which sometimes overwrite footage after a set number of days. Consider a second independent camera. If this is a genuine concern for you, having a second camera, angled differently, perhaps less obvious, perhaps covering the same area from another position, means that even if your main doorbell camera gets covered, you've still got an independent record of what happened. Make a formal complaint if you believe your rights were breached. You have a few routes here. Raise a complaint directly with the officer's own police force through their Professional Standards Department. Escalate the matter to the Independent Office for Police Conduct, IOPC, which oversees complaints about police conduct in England and Wales. Speak to a solicitor about whether the situation amounts to trespass, criminal damage, or a wider breach of your rights worth pursuing formally, especially if it happened alongside other conduct, like an unlawful entry, an unnecessary use of force, or a search that shouldn't have taken place. Before we wrap up, a few quick things I see people get wrong constantly. Mistake 1. Getting into a shouting match at the door. It's understandable to feel angry if you see your camera being tampered with, but raising your voice or getting physically confrontational plays directly into the hands of an officer looking for a reason to escalate the situation. Stay calm, stay clear, and let the facts do the talking later. Mistake 2. Physically trying to stop the officer's hand. Even if you believe what's happening is wrong, physically grabbing at an officer or trying to physically block them can expose you to a charge of obstruction or assault, regardless of whether their original conduct was lawful. The fight over what was lawful happens afterwards, with proper legal advice, not in the moment on your doorstep. Mistake 3. Assuming silence means agreement. Some people worry that staying quiet, or not immediately objecting, might be taken as consent. It's always safer to state your position clearly, once, calmly, as we covered above, rather than assuming your silence protects you. Mistake 4. Forgetting to follow up. A lot of people are shaken in the moment, the officer leaves and life moves on, and the incident never gets reported. If you genuinely believe your rights were breached, following up with a complaint, even a simple one, matters. It creates a record, and patterns of behavior by individual officers or forces often only come to light because people took the time to report what happened to them. Let's bring this together. Police in the UK have no more inherent right to be at your front door than your postman does, and that right can be withdrawn the moment you say so. Interfering with your property, including your camera, isn't something officers get an automatic pass on simply because they're in uniform. Stay calm. Don't open the door unless you genuinely have to. State your position clearly, once, and make sure you're recording. Because honestly, the best protection against one covered camera is a second one they don't know about. If you want to know exactly what your rights are, if police refuse to leave your doorstep even after you've asked them to go, check out the next video. I break that scenario down step by step. See you there. This video is for general information only and does not constitute legal advice. Every situation is different. If you're dealing with a specific incident, speak to a qualified solicitor.